All right. Yeah, Justin, I enjoyed reading your Apologia. I think it has a lot of relevance to what you're going to experience in college. I'm not sure exactly where you were planning to go at this point in time, but whether it's a Christian school or not, there will be people who are non-Christians, and people who view the world of their parents. They have the worldview of their parents, and they go to college, and they start to try to learn things on their own. And so my question for you is for the nihilist. Okay, what do you summarize their tenets, or maybe their leader, if you will.
It's a very morbid conclusion to come to. It's basically a conclusion that there is no absolute truth, and because there's no truth, there's no sense of right and wrong, and there is no purpose in life. And when you come to that conclusion, there's no reason, there's no oughtness, there's no reason to feel inclined to do anything. It's just whatever makes you happy. Or Nietzsche, who's the father of nihilism, comes to the conclusion that every man should strive to be a Superman in his own life. Everyone should try and rise above society and should strive to be better. But this is simply just a choice that everyone can make.
Yeah, so have you read the book of Ecclesiastes before?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so the character in the book of Ecclesiastes, he tries money, he tries wisdom, he tries health, he tries to work really hard to gather goods, to have the good life, and in all of it, he finds it to be meaningless, to be vanity, to be a mere vapor. So when you compare the worldview of Ecclesiastes with the worldview of a nihilist, how are they similar? How are they different?
Well, I believe that the nihilist worldview doesn't work. That's why I never say in my apologia that the nihilist view might be wrong. There might be no such thing as absolute truth, and there might be no such thing as God. But I mean, we see things through general and special revelations, but I don't believe that there is 100% proof enough to give an 100% decision to say that there is a God. So, but I think that what gives evidence to the Christian side and not the nihilist side is that because we have been built with a sense of morality, and that so many cultures of the world look down upon rape and murder and theft, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's because we've all been built with a sense of oughtness, and because we've been built with a sense of oughtness, that points to a creator who is a lot greater than us, who put it in within us.
Okay, so in the worldview of Ecclesiastes, everything is vanity. We all got one foot in the grave already. And the nihilist who says there's really no meaning to life at all, there's no objective meaning to the world, to the universe. What is the missing link, if you will, between the Ecclesiastes worldview and the nihilist worldview? What is an element of God that is missing?
Well, in both of them, I'm not sure what you mean by the missing link between them. I feel like they're very similar in many ways. Though,
So let me explain it this way. So Ecclesiastes gives a very dark reality to the world.
yes.
It asks the question, what is the meaning of life? And the rest of the Bible is spent addressing the fact that there is meaning and there is purpose to life.
Well, I think that.
So what is that meaning and that purpose?
Well, I think Ecclesiastes actually, by depicting this guy who basically tastes all the fruits of life and still hungers for more, I think that is excellent proof of that we've been built, we've been created to worship God and glorify Him. I don't have this in my apologia, but it does come to mind now that you say this. Tom Brady, very famous football player, says that he said he won like 3 or 4 Super Bowl rings, and yet he's still looking for something more. And you'd look at a guy like that and think, wow, he has everything. He's conquered the world. And yet even he has a void that cannot be filled because it has not been filled with God.
Okay. Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that God is love, and so that love is what is one of is the key ingredient. And so when God becomes man, lives a life as a human being, fully God and fully man, and suffers, there is there's this redemption of mankind that occurs with his death and his resurrection. So the real big question I wanted to ask you in the Apologia is a little bit of a scenario, and then I'll let Mr. Petrick peck away on the vocari. Is imagine yourself 3 years from now. You're going to be in college. Okay, you're pursuing your goal as being a businessman, and one of your childhood friends comes up to you, and he says, "You know what, Justin? I don't know if you've been following my family's news, but my father passed away very suddenly a couple weeks ago, and then a few weeks after that, my younger brother passed away. And imagine this friend. He's someone that's grown up in the church, who went to church every Sunday with his family, and he comes up to you and he says that, you know what, I'm starting to doubt this whole Christian thing. I'm starting to doubt the fact that there is, or I'm starting to doubt absolute truth, that God even exists. In the situation of that friend's suffering, how would you argue for absolute truth? So basically, someone's coming to you in tremendous suffering.
Yes, I understand. I think that maybe his faith is struggling because he's blaming all his suffering on God. And I would gently remind him that God did not bring suffering into the world. In fact, we were created to be in an intimate and loving relationship with God. And that when we chose sin, we brought sin and suffering into the world. And when we sin, we are the ones who are turning our backs on God and not the other way around. And why there is sin and suffering in the world is awful, and that's exactly why God sent his son Jesus to die in our place. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. And so I would tell him that yes, it's not, death and suffering is not supposed to be, it's you're right to hate it because it's not the way it's supposed to be. We weren't created to die. And that's why I would tell him to hold on and just remind him that good can come from suffering if he gives himself to God and lets him use him.
So would you tell him that immediately after he told you all this sad news? Or would there be a time period where you would just listen to him? I would
listen. There's another quote that actually comes to mind when you say that. When I forgot who says it, but there was a guy who said, proclaim the gospel at all times, use words if necessary. And basically that just means that we don't need to speak to proclaim the gospel. In our actions and in our lives and how we listen to people, we can show the gospel without even uttering a word. So I would be gentle, I would listen, but I think that there is an appropriate time to bring up subjects such as Christianity.
Yeah, and before we just move on, I think there's a lot to learn from Job and his friends. Job lost his children, lost his wealth, and his three friends sat with him for 7 days and didn't utter a word, sat with him in the dung heap. And so, like you said, preach the gospel at all times. And when words are necessary, use words, but having the ministry of presence is a powerful thing.
Justin, in your Vocari, you talked about your desire to become a successful businessman. Have you thought about what specific areas of business? That's obviously a very broad term. Any specific areas that you're interested in?
Well, I'm really interested in economics, and I think I'd focus more on economics, maybe business management, and then also finance, because I like math. It makes sense to me. So, but I'm not exactly sure exactly what I want to do. Like, if I'll be working for a business or if I'll start my own. I feel like there's a lot of things that could happen to me in the next 4 years, but that's why I think that business is the gate to tons of different jobs. If you have a business degree, you can go so many different places.
Have you, what kinds of things have you done so far to try to move towards becoming a businessman, if you will?
So I've applied for an internship to Praxis,
Okay.
which is, do we all know what
I mean, I'm
Praxis is?
familiar with it.
Okay, it's just an organization where entrepreneurs and millionaires and other people who are successful businessmen come together and discuss ideas. And I signed up for that and I actually got in, so
Oh,
I will be going to
congratulations,
Praxis
that's
this
awesome.
summer. Yes. Also, I've taken a microeconomics course, Mr. Norman's, and it was excellent. It's been life-changing.
Okay, so that gives me a little bit better feel for the direction to take my my questions now. So, within the business community, you know, whether you are, again, whether you're, you know, the owner of the business, or whether you're working your way up and you haven't, you know, as a, you know, you haven't quite got there, you're just one of the team. What's the ultimate motivation for a business?
I like the creative aspect to business. I like how it requires you to use facts and things you've learned, such as math, but then to be a good businessman, you have to think outside the box.
Okay.
And you have to use your creativity to create things that people need, and how to distribute them, how to market them, and there's so many different sides to business. And I also love working with people, and I feel that, but I also like being alone because I'm half an introvert, half an extrovert, and I feel like business would give me a good opportunity to have desk work, but then also interact with clients.
Okay, but what do you consider to be the primary goal of a business? Any business, generically speaking.
Well, I say,
what does a business exist for?
I say that it's to serve my clients and coworkers by providing them with reliable and honest work that is glorifying to God.
What's the bottom line? I hear you.
Glorify God. Glorify
okay.
God.
Is that going to keep you in business very long?
I think it is. I think that, I mean, there are certainly ways that businessmen can find loopholes and other dishonest ways to make money, but I feel like that's what would separate me from other businessmen in the workplace.
Okay. And the point that I'm trying to get at is, you know, the risk of it being vulgar, businesses exist to make money.
Yeah.
And you don't make money, you're not in business. I mean, it's real simple. I mean, you know, you can't pay the rent, you can't have a facility, you can't have a facility, you know, you can't be with, you may not attract customers, you may not be able to market. I mean, there, you know, all of that ultimately comes down to a business has to show a profit.
But I fail to see how that's in conflict with Christianity.
That was the next question I was going to ask you. Is there a conflict between the goal of a business to make money and the goals that you are trying to achieve personally with serving your fellow man and, you know, your Christian faith?
Well, of course, God calls us not to worship money, that we should worship Him alone. But I think I do claim that there are ways to be a successful businessman without falling into this trap of worldly pleasures and money. And I actually don't think that there are many ways that I don't think like it would be too difficult for me to become a successful businessman, but then become a dishonest man. I feel that there would be many ways.
So you can keep the two separate.
No, I think that you can be a strong Christian and a successful.
Yeah, that was kind
Yes,
of what I was
sorry.
getting at. Okay. So let me give you, since we were talking scenarios, let me give you a scenario. You're working your way up, so you're not the boss yet.
Yeah.
You're providing financial advice to your boss. Key decisions come up, and you know, in looking at the balance sheets and everything like that, the only way that this business or that this particular project can be accomplished would be by hiring undocumented immigrant workers. What do you advise? And
Well, if
why?
that's against the law, I think that's dishonest because God calls us to obey the laws of the land. So I would find a way, and if not, then the beauty of business is if one business fails, you can start a new one. There are many people who instantly give up when they